Hello everyone, my name is Paul Stevens and welcome to this short-term rentals webinar on making market data the core of your innovation strategy, sponsored by Track. I'm the editor of short-term rentals here at International Hospitality Media, and I'm going to be the host for today's session. Before we begin, let's just introduce our webinar sponsor for today. Here is a quick video from Track.
Track really acts as your partner rather than a vendor, and that makes all the difference in the world. Those vendor relationships really are what we have as businesses, and having a team of people that cares about our business just as much as we do really matters to us and has made for such a great partnership over the last couple of years.
So a big thank you to Track, part of TravelNet Solutions, for sponsoring this webinar. Really excited to jump into our conversation. But first, we're going to introduce our speakers for today. So I'm going to start from left to right and start with you, David, please.
Yeah, hi. It's great to be here. My name's David Stevens. I'm the lead data scientist at TravelNet. I get to work on really cool projects, and I'm very excited to give my insights on this market data discussion.
Thank you, David. And I'll get it out of the way early. It's funny because your name is the same as my twin brothers, so I'll try not to get you too confused with that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you, David. Next up, we have Austin.
Yeah, my name's Austin Ford. I'm the Associate Director of Revenue Management here at TravelNet. I'm over the Track Revenue brand, which was formerly known as Rented. So yeah, I lead the revenue management team there, implementing all the revenue management strategies for our clients that, invest in our revenue management tool.
Thank you, Austin. Next up, we have Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Crandall. I'm the executive assistant at Moose Management Vacation Rentals in Park City, Utah. We have about 160 vacation rental properties up here, and I've worked in the industry for about 10 years.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. And last but my name is Lee, so we have Stacy.
Good morning, or good afternoon, as the case may be. Stacy Charlton with Continuum Management Group. I've been doing this vacation rental thing. It'll be 30 years this fall. So I'm the old man of the group officially. Currently work in 3 beach markets and 3 ski markets, and I'm based out of Charleston, South Carolina. So happy to be here with everybody today.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to all of our panelists today. Really looking forward to this conversation with all of you. So some webinar guidelines for today, just before we get straight into the webinar. All of the details are going to be posted in the chat throughout, so please do go there if you want to ask any of the panelists a question. You can post at any time. We're going to have a panel discussion leading to audience questions today, and then a recording will be sent round to everyone within the next 48 hours or so. Before we begin though, let's put today's conversation into some context. Got the slide here, yep. So firstly, when in July, TravelNet Solutions announced that it was increasing its investment in its Track PMS to spur innovation and empower TravelNet's clients to improve overall business performance in the face of sluggish, albeit recovering vacation rental market demand. And the Track team have also written 2 bespoke features for our short-term rentals website this year. Firstly, focusing on why it can be so hard to make room and energy for an upgrade and why you must. And secondly, discussing the ways in which property managers and owners are able to respond to the market correction phase coming out of the pandemic. And finally, I have one more slide here. And finally, you can check out the recording for our distribution downstream webinar from March. That was Austin taking part in that one. And very recently, just yesterday, in fact, we published our podcast with Kate Berg, the Senior Account Manager Lead at Track, discussing everything from SEO to direct bookings, paid ad strategies, and much, much more. And all of the links there you can find in the chat function. So I want to let's jump to our first point about really understanding the power of market data. That's why we're all here. So I'm going to hand it over to David and Austin from Track. I know you've got a few slides to run through, and basically, David and Austin, I'd love to know how what it is that Track is doing to innovate in the market right now.
Right. So I'll start things off. Now, this first slide here focuses on 8 different factors when making a decision. Okay, and you can see here that data-driven decision-making is just one of these 8 factors. So while we're here to talk about market data, it's important that we understand what else is involved. Okay. Now, a lot of people on this call may have years, maybe even decades working in this industry. So there's a lot of experience and intuition. So when things like COVID happened, well, we experienced this before back in the housing crash of 2007 and 2008. So maybe it's very easy just to weather the storm. Well, we also have other decision-making factors because we look at our competitors. What are they doing? And we also have to think about our customer feedback, right? If our customers are, requiring more of a renovation on certain listings, well, maybe that will prompt us to do it, even though the data may tell us not to do that, or it may be even risky to do those things with the data. And then, of course, we have the available resources, just in case we can't do it, we can't physically do it. We're just not able to adapt it. Stakeholder inputs also when the property owners, when they say things like, hey, I want to adjust my strategy. And then, of course, there's a technology adaptation. Maybe it's difficult to have multiple systems, one to take care of the accounting, another to take care of the pricing, and it's really spread across many different things. So now let's just, the reason why I like that this is the first thing that we're discussing is because we have to be honest that data, while it's so important, is just one of these decision-making factors. So if you jump to the next slide, I'll talk about how we use this data internally. Okay, so this slide didn't come out exactly as I pictured, but I am going to try to work through it. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, if we're just looking at one listing out of thousands of listings, if we're just trying to analyze one listing, you can see that's the large blue dot in the middle of the screen. And then our comps are these cyan or these like kind of greenish blue colored dots. So this is a way that we are taking data from our external data provider, and we're applying it. We're trying to find out how this listing is compared to the comps. Okay, we use internally these KPIs. Now, I think everybody on this call can understand that the average daily rate, or the ADR, for a listing like this is about 236. You can see in the top left, 236 for the next 30 days. And if we look at the comps, we can see in that first gray box, it's 313. Okay, so we're priced a little bit low, but maybe that's more of a strategy, right? This is just the way this is being priced. If we look at the occupancy for this listing, we're at 67%. Great. And then the rest of the comps is 50%. Okay, so we're doing better. So we're lower on price on ADR, but we're higher on occupancy. And that offsets in the RevPAR. And we can see that between the two numbers, 158 and 156. So then we use these indexes, and this is when we really start to get into things, because we have one listing that we're analyzing. This is where we can use the indexes. So we can see in these blue boxes on the right side, in the top right of the screen, the market penetration index, which is basically just taking the occupancy of the listing and then dividing it by the occupancy of the comps. So we can see that 67% divided by 50%. Okay, so we have 1.33. But what does that mean, 1.33? Well, if we have a factor of 1, we have an index of 1, then we're completely aligned. Okay, good news. We can do the same thing with the rates. So the average rate index is 0.76. And we know that because it's a little bit lower, a little bit higher. And then that offsets in the revenue generation index. Okay, so we have about a 1.01. So pretty much aligned. We have 158 for our listing and 156 for the comps. And this is just one listing. What if we have 100 listings or 1,000 listings over the next 7 days, 30 days, 90 days? So you can see how it automatically starts to get even more confusing. Now, that's the hard part about data. So coming from a data background, I understand how confusing and overwhelming it can be. But our goal is to simplify the complex. And that's what we're doing here. So very quickly, we can take external data that we get from Airbnb, Vrbo. We very quickly put together a comp set, and we can then analyze what is the revenue generation index. So, I talked about strategy before, and the strategy for each individual listing can be different. A lot of these people may say, or a lot of these property owners may say, I just want to maximize revenue. That's great. That's a very good strategy. Or somebody might say, I want it occupied only for 2 months out of the year because it's too much to handle when there are too many renters, and eventually I want to retire in this house. Okay, different strategies. So with different strategies, we can then analyze whether or not this listing is gauging very well with the other comps, or if we might need to, maybe we were leaving money on the table, maybe we need to increase the rates a little bit. Now, we don't know exactly what this listing is, and maybe it could just be that it's in need of a renovation, so that's why it's priced so low, but it's getting occupancy. But that's what we are doing in our internal organization. We're analyzing not just on the high level, but we're going down in a lot deeper into just these 3 KPIs. Now, Austin is going to talk about a few more KPIs, and I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, so if you go to there we go. So, a lot of my world is centered around the revenue management stuff. That's everything that my day-to-day is. And, one way that we're innovating is, the investment into that revenue management platform and, what we're doing, with my team and everything in terms of helping clients maximize their revenue management strategy. And, one thing that we're obviously talking about with this is how does market data play into that? And it's so important. I mean, it's no secret that, everybody has at some point, used the scraping method where we're scraping data from, the Airbnbs, the Vrbos of the world. My team, we're very big with, working with key data and, getting the data off of these platforms. It helps us as revenue managers make the best informed decisions possible. Obviously, David mentioned the COVID thing. It's no secret markets have shifted and changed so much in the last few years that the more data we have, the better off that we're going to become. Many individuals, many customers, clients have realized just how important it is to, not only compare your data to yourself historically, but to also look at that market data and see just how your market and even other markets are performing. One thing I tell many clients is, look, you can obviously look at where you're located, but it's important to see just how other markets are doing, because, they have direct correlations to what you're doing as well. And that's what I kind of tell clients, and what we focus on the revenue management side of things is there's several KPIs, as you see on this screen, that are important to, maybe to Heather, but, to Stacy, it's important that he looks at these other ones. So, these are just generalized KPIs, but a good indication of what you can look at to make sure you're making the best informed decisions with the market data that you have.
Thank you, Austin, and thank you, David, for a really good snapshot of what you're doing at Track right now. And I don't know necessarily who this next question is best directed to of the two of you. Maybe both of you can come in, but just expand a little bit for us on what this constitutes. Track's major shift. I think it started back in April 2024. This sort of direction where you wanted to really accelerate innovation and empower your clients to really improve their business performance in the face of this sluggish demand.
Yeah, so I'll start off with this. So as Austin said, we've partnered with Key Data. So when we get this data from Key Data, there are multiple data sources. What are those sources? The first is what we get from Airbnb and Vrbo. So Austin mentioned scraping data. We get that data from key data and it's cleaned. What do I mean by cleaned? Well, if anybody's ever tried to scrape or even gotten some of this external data, it looks messy. You know, there's missing data all over. There's data points that are just flat lines. You know, for 365 days, you just see, you know, $500 a night. That doesn't help our algorithm, right? What we need is we need to see trends, seasonality. We need to see day of the week. We need to see week of the year. You know, there's so much that we can glean just from one data point. So what we do is, instead of taking every single Airbnb and Vrbo listing around the world, we limit it to a subset that's actually good quality data. So that's our first step. So before any of the algorithm, any of the calculations, we need good quality data. Then we process it. We've changed our internal model that actually is a lot more robust, so that if there are any missing data points in maybe a very small section of the world, and there's only maybe a 2 or 3 10-bedroom locations somewhere in Utah, if there is any missing data, we're able to supplement that data so that it doesn't just all of a sudden seem out of whack. So that's the important thing, is that we're first of all just innovating on the revenue, on the pricing algorithm. But the second data source I mentioned already actually comes from the direct PMS data. So key data offers direct PMS data. This is analyzed on a market level, on a county level, on a state level, and even on a country level. So instead of just taking this data and maybe looking at and it kind of confirming what we're thinking, we've created internal reports specific to individual counties. And those internal reports can be created on the fly. So if we ever want to compare certain areas in North Carolina, or if we want to ever compare other areas of what happened in Hawaii this time last year, as we remember the wildfires, we can still see all of those trends. So we analyze the high level KPIs. So we're looking at ADR, occupancy, RevPAR, as well as the 3 KPIs I mentioned already. And we're even looking down to a county level or a market level. So we can analyze, as an example, the entire Southeast United States and compare that to individual locations. So taking this data, and instead of just taking its face value, we're really digging into the details. And like we mentioned earlier on the call, we're now finding out that there is more of a stabilization in the market, which is good news. It's reassuring. And we're able to look forward and compare those same pacing points in time to how we were at the same date last year and the same date the year before. And we can see how that trend is starting to level out. So that's what we're doing internally. It's very exciting times, because then we even have some ideas for the product itself, but I'm not the product manager, so I'm not allowed to talk about that.
And again, really, between you, I don't know, again, Austin, perhaps, how do you think this gives track clients an advantage as they navigate this market recovery, like David's referring there with the stabilization?
I think, you know, like I had kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, was, you know, the fact, you know, to kind of piggyback on what David's doing and the wonderful work on the data science side, it's, you know, it's given our clients a little bit more of it's given them an advantage, you know, with this market data, you know, with, you know, what's being fed into, you know, into our pricing algorithms and stuff like that for our revenue management tool. And, you know, it gives them just more of an advantage in terms of saying, okay, I have this, you know, actual, you know, solidified data, rather than what, you know, most are doing in terms of just scraping it and hoping and getting lucky that you're going to be scraping the correct thing, the right thing, the properties that, you know, are of similar value, that are, you know, similar amenities. With this, you know, with what we're doing, you don't have to worry about that. And then, you know, to even kind of go off more, you know, what we're doing with on my side of things here is, you know, you've got, you know, the dynamic pricing platform that obviously has become such a key success for, you know, the vacation rental industry as a whole. But then you also have the ability with us to, you know, to tap into a full-time revenue manager that handles this for you. And, we're able to look at this market data each and every day. We know how the algorithm reacts. We know what's being fed into it. And then you also have that human intervention that can go in and, make changes and adjustments and everything that will allow the best possible outcome for your pricing and for your revenue management, which obviously results in, making money for your clients and everything. So I think that's one thing definitely to speak to that gives an advantage to those clients is that you have people, that are on the ground for you that can assist you with that see things that are working in numerous markets across the world, and what they're seeing and, the collaboration that goes, into that. So that's one thing, in my opinion, that I think kind of sets us apart and is really, helping our clients maximize, their revenue in a never-changing market. Obviously, we know how things have changed, obviously, in the last 4 years, and just within the last, 9 months, how 2024 has been vastly different even than last year in 2023. So that's what I would say is really helping our clients.
And before we go on and speak to Heather and Stacy, our property managers, Austin, I want to come in there as well, because you're associate director of revenue at TravelNet's track revenue product. So how would you compare that to the benchmarking data that you've already alluded to, and what's the importance of data quality and consistency at the same time?
It is, words can't express how important it is, because at the end of the day, if the data you're looking at is off even in the slightest, you can miss out on informed pricing decisions. Obviously, we all know, and we've probably all worked in the markets that we're in for quite some time, and I don't think there's any better testament than saying that, yeah, your market, and that is so true. But at the same time, too, if COVID taught us anything, it's that market conditions are consistently changing. And, the market that I have grown up in and priced my whole life, it's a lot different than what it was a couple of years ago. So those data points, those benchmarking data points, along with the market data, it solidifies the decisions that we're making and should make us feel a little bit more at ease with our pricing strategies. You obviously can continue to price, a market the way you have done it for years and years, but if you just rely just on that, you're going to miss something eventually. And by looking at this market data, the benchmarking data, you're able to make the most appropriate decision when it comes to what you need to do with your rates. And obviously you can do that as well with, I'm sure Stacy and Heather are very familiar with. You've got owners that want you to do this and an owner that wants you to do this. And that's the beauty of it. You can do those different strategies with those different homes, those different owners, and still come out on top. And I think, going into with my position, we are consistently having to explain to clients why this is what we're doing and here's why. And that data allows us to justify and show the decisions that we're making. And, they're able to take what we give them and go back to owners and have easier conversations, because it's never an easy conversation when you have maybe someone who's upset with maybe revenue numbers, and when you show them those data points, it makes that conversation that much easier. So
David, is there anything you wanted to add yourself?
Well, it's hard to follow that one. Austin said a lot. When it comes to the benchmarking data, this is it's so important to get it right. That's why I mentioned that you have to have clean data, good quality data, because it doesn't matter how much data you have. If it's garbage data, you're going to get garbage out. So we have to make sure that we're working with the best data. And that's why we're working with key data, because they give us so many different data points from all over the world. And what's important is that when we use that data, we're really looking down into the details. We can, like Austin said, we can fine tune down to an individual market and see how the changes have come. There's a lot of questions about using historical data, and I think historical data is a very good indicator for us to say, okay, that's, we can see from where we came. But like Austin said, over the last 4 years, we can't use it as a starting point. It's a good idea for us to use as to see where we came from, but we cannot use it in order to dictate whether or not it's going to get booked at the same price year over year. So that's why these benchmarks are so important, because then we can see what the rest of the comp set or what the rest of the market is doing. We can say, okay, given this listing, where we are, we're actually above or we're slightly below, and we can adjust that market strategy very quickly. So we can actually do more with fewer resources.
Thank you very much for that, David and Austin. Really, really clearly presented, and great to learn exactly what you're doing with Track. We'll come back to some of those things, particularly on the metrics and the KPIs that you mentioned very shortly. But I do want to dedicate our time to both Heather and Stacy. Heather, I'll come to you first. Both you and Stacy have completely different markets in your portfolios. I think you're based around the Park City, Utah state region. Could you just give us some, explain the market a little bit, and also what your owners specifically are saying to you right now?
Yes, we're based in Park City, Utah. It's home of the Sundance Film Festival, and epic skiing. So people come from all over the world every year to ski here. And we have obviously, just like every market, noticed a huge change since COVID. Before COVID, we could say, oh, all our 5-bedroom houses will rent for this much per night over Christmas. And we would just leave it at that. And year after year, we'd increase just a little bit because you increase every year. And now we just don't have that option anymore because the market has changed so much. So having that clean data, like David talked about, is so important and key for us. We used to go out and just compare pricing based on the address. We'd Google the address and we'd find the houses near that home that are for rent, and we'd look them up on Airbnb and Vrbo and try to figure out what we should price, $5 lower or $10 lower. And that strategy sort of worked for us for several years, and then it just doesn't work anymore. We have new owners that have an expectation of Park City. They expect their house to rent for all the holidays, for Sundance, and all through ski season. Our prime season is December to the end of March. And then we have 2 mud seasons during the year, April, May, and September to November, and then summer. Summer used to be super popular in Park City as well, and it has tapered off quite a bit. So our owners are coming to us, especially those who have been with us for a long time, and demanding to know why they're not getting more reservations. Why are we not booking? What is going on? We always book these dates. And it's really handy and really has been able to save us from having people quit thinking they can go somewhere else to get more reservations when we show them that data. And we say, look, this is what the market's doing. This is what your neighborhood is doing. This is what the county's doing, Park City's doing. It's so helpful that it's not just our opinion on what the market's doing and what's happening, that we actually have solid data to show them that we're not crazy, that we do want to make the money, that we do want to rent. But I understand your house used to rent for $600 a night and now it's $450. And I know that frustrates you, but this is what's going on in the market. We want to get you reservations. That's why we're making these decisions about pricing. So that's kind of where we're at. We have a lot of like I said before, we have a lot of new owners in Park City who think things are going to be a certain way, who are disappointed sometimes in the initial setup of their property, and then the first 6 months to a year, they don't understand. And again, we just show them the data. This is what it's like. This is what's happening in the market, so that they can see that we are using all the tools at our disposal to make sure that they make money and we make money. And that's ultimately what we're after.
I mean, that kind of links into my next question about, are there any specific data-based strategies that you are doing to outperform the rest of the market, or is it something as simple as just giving them those hard facts about what is happening out there in the market and being...
Well, we have a revenue manager that we use outside of our dynamic pricing tool. And so we use her, and we use our dynamic pricing tool, and we use key data. And when you have all of those things, you can definitely present something to owners that really shows them a comprehensive look of what's happening in the market. So we utilize kind of all the tools at our disposal.
Thank you very much, Heather. We'll come back with some questions. Really interesting learning about your market. Let's switch to a completely different market now. With Stacy, you're CEO of Continuum Management Group, and you're also doing strategic leadership for several different areas too. Please just explain the markets that you're operating into, and what are your owners coming to you and asking for or wanting to talk about?
So thank you. By the way, Heather, you nailed that. So thumbs up. We've got, so similar to Heather, we've got 3 ski markets. So we're in Steamboat Springs, Winter Park, and Big Sky, Montana. And they're all different within those markets, depending on, what's going on at the base area, what improvements have been done. Steamboat's put a lot of money into their on-mountain experience, and so we're natively getting a bump there. Big Sky's doing the same thing. Winter Park is more of a front range resort. They're also putting money in there, but we had a bad snow year last year. I think Heather had a great one. We didn't get that snow, so that's a variable that comes into play as we move into the season. People are looking to say, where was the snow last year? A lot of people went to Europe. It was cheaper to get on a plane and go fly to Switzerland and ski than it was to stay in the US and go skiing. So we saw a lot of people, they wanted to get out of the country, and they also saw the price point of US ski markets versus getting, over to Europe for a change. I think we saw the blowback this summer on that, where a lot of the European countries have had enough of the Americans, and they're posting signage. So, maybe we'll see a return to that. In the beach markets, it's kind of similar. We could do no wrong for the last 3 years. We could take rates as high as we wanted to take them. We could do anything we wanted and see the occupancy just sail through. And the shoulder seasons turned into primary seasons. And as the country kind of went back to normal, things kind of dried up and changed back to the way they were before. And I think, what we talked about too is like the owner expectations. There's owners that have been doing this for as long as I have, and they've seen this before. They've been through Y2K, they've been through the real estate crash in 2008. They've seen this, and so they're like, well, that was great, but I understand we're back to normal. And then you've got people that have come in that have, they're riding the wave. They've seen how well vacation rentals have performed these last few years, so they're jumping in, and maybe they haven't done a lot of research, and they're coming in as the wave kind of crests over. And we have a lot of conversations with those kinds of owners on, this is where the data comes into play, and making sure that we're objectively explaining to them. It's not an opinion, as Heather said. It's like, this is the reality of it. Here's what 2-bedroom units on Hilton Head are doing. Here's what 5-bedroom units in the mountains are doing. And I think depending on the owner, that can resonate with them. They can be upset about it. They can shoot the messenger, but if the data is correct, there's not a lot they can do to argue with it. Not to say that they won't. And with that, I think with dynamic pricing, with what we're seeing post-pandemic, there's a lot of people adjusting rates down. And when we talk about opportunity, it's finding those spots where bookings are increasing and taking rates up. And I think that's one of the things, that's one of the opportunities as we see dynamic pricing really mature and come into focus that wasn't there a couple of years ago. It was basically, how quick can we get these rates down? And when you started to do the comp sets, you were just like, what's going on here? Now we're starting to see these tools start to recognize, this is booking up really fast. We probably need to get these rates up. So that's kind of a long-winded and rambling response, but that's what I got.
Is it that sort of educational element that you think really builds that credibility with your owners and allows you to then employ them in the data-driven strategies?
Absolutely. You know, the last 5 years have really seen data come into focus in the vacation rental industry in a way that airlines, hotels, car rentals, they've all had this kind of technology for years, and the algorithms are mature. People expect to see hotel rates change. They expect that if you rent a car last minute, it's going to be really expensive. We haven't seen that happen in vacation rentals. Like, people still know if you wait till the last minute, you're probably going to get the best rate unless you're picking a really prime week. So being able to go to these owners and as Heather said, say, you know, I don't like it either. Like, this thing used to rent for $1,000 a night. We're not getting that anymore. We want to too. You know, a rising revenue impacts everybody. We want to do as much as we can for the owner because we benefit from that directly. It's a commission-based relationship most of the time in this industry. So I think being able to say it's not my feelings, this is what the data in each market is showing. You can back it up. You can come at it 3 different ways. Owners don't necessarily like it, but at the end of the day, you know, sometimes it takes them a year to recognize that, all right, yeah, we're not getting 7 nights in summer anymore, but you can get them there and you can show, you know, the owners that trust us to do what they've hired us to do will generally do better than the owners that try to say, I'm going to rent this for $5,000 a night, or it's going to sit empty. It may sit empty, and then we can talk at the end of the year and see if you want to, like, take us for a swing. You've signed an agreement with us. You've done your research. Trust us to understand what's going on with these markets and in this industry.
Thank you, Stacy. David, Austin, I don't know if one of you wanted to come in there on what you've heard and expand there.
Yeah, actually, both Stacy and Heather said it all. They're very knowledgeable, especially in their markets. And it's very hard, from what I'm understanding, it's very hard for a property manager or property owner to really kind of, you know, swallow that pill sometimes. It's very difficult to understand that, you know, maybe you're not going to rent it for what you thought or even last year. You know, and that's how quickly this is changing. Using the data in not just as like a defense mechanism, but like Heather said and Stacy said, as a teaching tool, as an educational tool. It really, you know, they either decide, you know, they buck against the trend, or they decide, okay, maybe, you know, maybe there is some truth to this. So of course, you know, data is very important. But I think one of the most important things is, like we said at the beginning, is, you know, there are so many other deciding or at least factors when making a decision. How is the next door neighbor doing? They're already fully booked for the month of December. You know, why isn't my listing booked? You know, I think I have better amenities, or I have more. You know, I have more to go for. But you know, it's very tricky because, like I said, you know, data is just one of the tools that we can use. We need to use it in order to innovate, but there's still some kind of feeling that, you know, you know, as far as intuition, you know, some of the owners, they have intuition about this, and it's important that, you know, as these new owners come in, that we can, you know, still have conversations with them, honest conversations, just like Stacy and Heather said.
Thank you, David. Just before we go on to the next stage of the conversation, I want to say if anyone's got any questions they'd like to ask our panelists, you've got the chat function there, and we'll try and find some time towards the end to pose them to our panelists. We've talked a lot about bookings and touched a little bit on booking windows, but I guess given the rate of change in the market, I'll turn back to Heather and Stacy. Maybe Heather first. Heather, have you kept the same strategy when it comes to last minute bookings now? Is that something you're getting a lot more of now since COVID?
Yes. Prior to COVID, we'd have a full winter calendar for the current calendar year. The previous winter, people would come, they would ski a week and they go, oh, we want to come back next year. And they would book again. Or coming to Park City for the first time, they'd book 9 or 10 months in advance. And we just don't have that anymore. And so we again, have a lot of owners who, why isn't my calendar full for December 2024, for January 25? What is going on in the market? And we've had to explain, because it does seem like travel trends lean toward last minute bookings. And we employ a strategy where it's priced higher the further in advance that you book, and then it lowers, you know, the closer you get to the stay dates. And I don't know that owners really love that, but again, we can show them the data that they're booking, that people are choosing their house over other houses in that last minute booking window. It has changed a lot. We're still not used to it. We still look at the calendar and are shocked as a property management company when we don't see that it's October today and the Sundance Film Festival, our properties aren't full yet, and that's in January. It used to be that they'd be just completely full by this point. So having those changes is really challenging, and explaining to owners why things are the way they are. That's where I remember David mentioning the worldwide data, that we can show them it's not just Park City, it's not just Utah, like it's not even just the US, that these travel trends are worldwide, and that this is what's happening, and to trust us that we know what we're doing. We're going to get people into your property, but that those changes, they feel sort of like they're here to stay, at least for a while. So
yeah, thank you for those insights, Heather. Stacy, I don't know if you're experiencing something similar, and if there are any specific metrics that people are looking for.
It's definitely changed. And one of my favorite uses of data is when we get an owner that calls and says, last year at this time, I was 100% booked out. And 90% of the time when you go do the research, you're able to say, that's not true. Like you think it was true, but it's not. You actually only had 1 or 2 reservations on the book. So some of it's just sorting them out at the top and saying, well, the reality is you weren't fully booked out this year, even though you thought you were. But the booking windows have changed. People are waiting a little bit longer. There's more supply. Towns aren't selling out the way they used to, and people have figured out, I can wait. And because we move inversely to airline tickets and car rentals, the consumers understand, if I wait, this price is probably going to go down. I think that's the opportunity in the industry, is for us to recognize, what, if we can shift this, we can change behavior. It's not going to happen overnight, and it may never happen, but I think that's where we're at. Is consumers have been trained to understand, in this industry you can wait and get a good price last minute. Where we try to combat that is, you're not going to get the pick of the litter. If you book a year out, you're going to get that nice oceanfront house. You're going to get that ski in, ski out. You might be left with something that doesn't suit you the way you want. So it's kind of playing on those emotions to not wait to the last minute. If you do, you'll probably get a good price, but there's a good chance you're not going to get what you want. People also understand that the ADR is going to go down most likely as they wait. So there's a lot of reasons consumers are waiting to do that. We're enabling it. And I don't know what the solution is on the consumer behavior, other than educating the owners. Again, like, we would love to be 7 nights, 7 nights length of stay year round, and set the rates once at the beginning of the season and not touch them. But increasingly, this is a very dynamic and fluid rate and length of stay situation. So
exactly, I think that is a running thread through this conversation, and particularly the educational angle there too. So I'm going to turn back to David and Austin. Actually, I might put this to Austin first. We learned a little bit about this in the slides earlier, Austin, but how are you at Track educating your property managers that historical demand or occupancy rates can be helpful, but not always at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, we're just showing them the numbers, the changes, from 21 to 22, 23, and so forth on. And, one thing too that we really kind of harp on, and it's what I love about key data when you're kind of looking at the benchmarking data, and Stacy actually just mentioned it, was not only do you look at, the way the rates are changing, the market conditions, but the inventory. The inventory that has changed and has grown in nearly every market is it's absurd. It's substantial numbers. I mean, and Key Data does a wonderful job of showing you on the market insights that, hey, this is what we were seeing a year ago, and this is how many properties are there now. So you've got those factors to take into consideration as well. And that plays a big part, especially when the market that you're so used to pricing has 1,000 new units there. You're competing with 1,000 more available nights on those properties. So that's one thing that we're doing is we're just consistently educating them. I think that was one thing with dynamic pricing when it kind of when it took off was you were having to educate your property managers, your clients on our side in terms of saying, hey, this is why the rates are, why they're doing what they're doing in terms of changing. But now it's more or less we're educating them on this is the strategy that we're employing because of the way, the market conditions are changing, the way the inventory has went up, the way the booking window has drastically decreased. So all those factors play into that education part as we've kind of mentioned over the last few minutes. And while it may not necessarily be a fun conversation, it's a necessary conversation because if you don't have it, then once again, as I had mentioned earlier, you leave money on the table. You're missing out on some things. It becomes a race to the bottom, and nobody wants that. So those are just some of the various things that we do in terms of educating our property managers for them to go back and do what Stacy and what Heather are doing and educating those owners and showing them not only the market conditions but showing them the inventory changes, showing them the way that the airline tickets are fluctuating, international travel if it's going up or down, the cruises and things. There's so many market factors that play into what your ski market is doing or what your beach market's doing, as Stacy and Heather have alluded to. So
I think the only thing I can piggyback on that is that, the owner that says my neighbor's fully booked for the entire next year, like he's definitely left money on the table, and being able to show them, like, if you want to rent that thing for $39 a night for 330 nights, that's a strategy. But the wear and tear and the risk of fraternity coming in there for a big weekend, it increases exponentially when you employ that kind of strategy. It may be for somebody, but a lot of the people that we work with would rather see us achieve the same year-end number with less wear and tear on the unit. And if you can make them understand how the booking windows work, that you shouldn't feel good about being sold out a year in advance necessarily, then that's the best course forward with some of these homeowners.
And Stacy, as an owner yourself, and again, I hark back to the title of this webinar, all about making market data the core of your innovation strategy. What benefits? How is it beneficial for you to have this access to the data that we've been talking about, as opposed to scraping it off Airbnb, Vrbo, etc.?
One of the biggest is being able to spend time analyzing the data rather than spend time pulling the data together. I mean, back in the day, I remember sitting in a room full of people. We all had our laptops up. We're looking at a competitor. I'm going to take the 1 bedrooms. Heather's going to look at the 2 bedrooms. Austin's going to look at the 3. David's going to look at the 4. And we're going to go through and we're going to spend 8 hours just putting a spreadsheet together. You can do that in minutes now. And the amount of brain damage and like fried cells that you used to have to go through to build a comp set, and it changes overnight anymore. So you can't do that anymore. And so I think you're able to get your hands on a lot more comprehensive data these days, and that allows you to spend time making decisions. That's what your revenue manager should be doing. They shouldn't be scraping websites, and spot checking here and there is good, but if they're spending their entire day out on Airbnb, VRBO, looking at your competitors, then they're not making decisions. They're pulling data together, and by the time it's decision-making time, they might be a little bit cooked up there to be able to do that. So I think the data should do the hard work, and the human beings should be able to make the informed decisions and analysis off of that. And that's what I like the most about having the ability to grab so much data these days.
Thank you, Stacy. Heather, is that something you would concur with?
Oh, completely. similarly to Stacy, we used to be a 2 to 3 person company when I started, and I can't even express how much time was wasted. I mean, it felt wasted scraping data, comparing Airbnb, like I said, Googling the address, finding homes in the same area. What are they priced at? You know, how many of their dates are blocked for owner stays? How many of their dates are actually rented? I don't miss that at all. I agree, my brain cells, same as Stacy. There's some stuff in here that got messed up doing that kind of data research. So I don't miss that, and the convenience. The convenience can't even be really expressed. It's made such a large difference. And truthfully, in Park City, we do a lot of partnering with real estate agents, because we want most of, I can't say most, sometimes people are buying homes in Park City to rent them out as vacation rentals. Park City's not a ton of people don't live there full-time as their full-time residents. And so having the data to even send to real estate agents to say, here's a pro forma, here's a comp set, show this to your client so that they can see they want to come with our company because we have the most accurate data. You know, they can see how the market is going, has been really helpful as well.
Thank you, Heather. And before we close off, I want to get some final thoughts from everyone. So, Stacy, I'll head back to you first. Talking about Track more specifically, are there any, as a property owner yourself, are there any factors or strategies that in the way that Track is specifically helping you to help your owners at the same time?
They've come a long way in a short amount of time. I mean, we went with Track initially for the PMS aspect. You know, what's going to be the most rock solid PMS. I'm a former Navis client. For those that are familiar with that, it's a really powerful CRM. Used it for years, and when I found out about Pulse, I was like, well, let's take it for a spin. So we're using Pulse in all the markets, and I love it. It gives you that clarity in the call center. They've expanded into websites. They've got revenue management. They've done a good job, I think, looking at all the disciplines in vacation rentals and saying, can we find a need for that? If it's the PMF, if it's websites, if it's revenue management, how can we help, especially if you're a smaller agency where you don't have the ability to hire 1 million people and have a web developer on your team. They've made it very easy to say, I'm going to get into vacation rentals. I need these 5 or 6 tools in order to do it. They made it very simple to be kind of a one-stop shop, and to be supportive, to have, people like Boston that can, explain the data to people that are getting into it. We worked with Christopher a couple of years ago. I can't remember his last name, but he was great. We had a weekly call, and he'd come and kind of read the tea leaves for us and help us figure out what was going on. So I think they've done a very nice job, especially in the last few years, kind of developing the tenets that are necessary if you're going to be successful and be a big operator in this industry.
Heather, a similar experience for you?
Yes, we love Track. We went through, I think, 3 different softwares before Track, and always found areas. I mean, there's always areas of improvement, but areas where we really felt like the software was lacking, the support was lacking. We don't feel that with Track. It's very comprehensive. It covers everything, pretty much everything that we need. And they're constantly innovating and adding new features, taking suggestions from us as users on what things they can do to improve. All of that kind of stuff makes a huge difference. So we're big fans of Track. We're happy that we switched.
Thank you, Heather. David, any final thoughts from you, or what's your outlook maybe looking like for the rest of this year into 2025?
Well, as far as the market is concerned, we are starting to see stabilization. Now, that's not in every market all over the world, but for the United States, we are starting to see that we're not seeing as big of decreases as we were in the past, going from 2021 down to 2022, and then from 2022 down to 2023. So year over year, as far as pacing, we're starting to see a lot of stabilization, which is good news. It means that at least we're leveling off. I would say my final thoughts when it comes to track revenue, as well as when we're discussing all of the other new projects for track, we're really looking at all data points as much as we possibly can in order to provide our customer with the best view of their data. We use historical data points for the listing, so for the actual listing in question, the comps, and we're even using that for the market benchmarks. We're looking at history, and then we're looking forward. We're seeing what the market is doing, how they're changing their rates, and if there's a concert that gets booked, or if there's a yearly film festival that moves a week earlier to avoid some weather, or whatever decision is made, we pick up on that. And what's important is that all of our customers and all of our team are equipped with all of those data points. So not just absolute amounts, like what is it, was $500 a night, and now it's $400 a night, or now it's $600 a night, wherever that change is. We're using percentage changes as well. So, instead of actually saying, oh, well, now it's been dropping by $50 year over year, we can then use a percentage and say it's only been dropping by 5%, or whatever that percentage may be. So, really wrapping your head around all of the data points and then sticking with the ones that are working, and using, the track revenue team and even all those data points, I think will really take you a long way.
Thank you, David. And one final quick contribution from Austin before we head off. Austin, like me, you're going to be at VRMA in Phoenix in, what was it, 11-12 days, something like that. I know there's a session coming up as a company. Can you give us a little hint at what we might be able to expect from that?
Yeah, no, like I said, we will be at VRMA in Phoenix here in just like you said, just a few days. I know, just vacation rental insights and innovation, what the current trends, what we're looking at, what we've seen over the past year and a half, and what we're seeing is what's coming. We've done a couple sessions, ourselves here on kind of a market recovery and what that expected recovery plan is going to look like. And once again, that will be kind of focused on the data. What does the data tell us? And it's funny because we can have so many sessions just on that data, and what do we see? What are we identifying? What kind of story does it tell? But yeah, we're just going to be talking about, what a path to recovery looks like and how you can stay ahead of the competition. Q4 will be there, and we'll be within, obviously we started Q4 today, and, just what can you do to, finish the year strong and start next year even stronger. So.
Excellent. That's a great way to finish. Thank you, Austin. A big thank you to all of our contributors today, to David, to Austin, to Heather, and to Stacy. Got a couple of quick slides just to run through before we finish. The next webinar in our short-term rentals series is a week today on Tuesday, the 8th of October, and that's discussing social and corporate responsibility, a force for good in travel and tourism. We've got a full panel, and the sign-up link I can see has been posted in the chat now. And then after that, the next big event in our calendar that we're hosting is just over a month away. It's our second annual short-term rental summit in London, with a raft of high caliber C-suite speakers and attendees from across the world. We're offering a 10% discount to all attendees on this webinar. You can use the code on screen now. I think that is STR24 Summit 10, and when directed to, you can visit the link in the chat now. For opportunities to work with us, please do contact my colleague Sam. He's our head of growth, and it's a great time to be working with us across our podcast, webinar, all sorts of different content and ways to collaborate there. So looking forward to connecting with you there. This session is going to remain open for just another 2 minutes with all of the details in the chat. Before we finish as well, I want to say I want to extend my best thoughts and wishes to everyone who's been affected by the hurricane in the States, and we're wishing that you're all going to be safe. We know it's been a tough time. I want to say finally a big thank you to Track for sponsoring this webinar. Finally, a big thank you to all of our speakers, and of course to all of you for tuning in today, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinions across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so, they went on a journey over the past decade creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 52,500 in our email database across all sectors, and over 68,000 across our social channels. Everything we do challenges the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us, and we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, and meet with IHM. Connect with us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.